And welcome back to Wall Tactics. Today we're going to talk about the Cult of Speed. Now, everybody loves the Cult of Speed as it's a really well renowned orc clan, which sadly is doing poorly in Pariah Nexus and since the release of it in the Codex. But that doesn't mean we can't have fun with it. At least as some time has passed, we finally have seen some results and can come to some conclusions in the Cult of Speed as to the do's not, and how much can be a meme and how much can be actually winnable with, right? A few things I want to point out before we talk about it too deeply is one, I think Cult of Speed is totally fine as small games, as having the capability to move quickly around the battlefield means that you can score secondaries and primary better than other armies at 1K and smaller point values. Also, the durability of the buggies comes a little bit more into play at that point value. Two is that in Crusade, this Cult of Speed works very well as well. Those are things that we're not going to go too deeply into this as we get into this presentation. But I do want to give those acknowledgement. That way, at least if you're a newer player going into this and you're working your way up to a full 2K and you're taking either of those avenues, you can feel, reinforced that you're doing the right thing and it feels really good. Before we get into the presentation, word to our sponsor, the Baron of Dice, who helps us do our paint project and competitions. So shout out to Baron of Dice. We have 5% discount in our description because nobody likes taxes. So of course, give them a shout out and check them out. It helps us out. And back to the Cult of Speed. So Cult of Speed isn't known for her doing very well right now, to be fair. But let's talk about some things that actually does and does not do. So here's a few archetypes. So if you're looking at what an archetype is, let's say you're a newer or a moderate intermediate player, an archetype's kind of like the framework or the backbone of what the list is. So even though this is going to be simplifying essentially what everything does, this is the way I like to look at it, and it helps you kind of build your list out, right? So the detachment rule for Cult of Speed, as everyone knows, is that you're eligible to shoot, in a or charge in a unit which you fell back. You're you're able to shoot in which turn they advanced or fell back. Excuse me. So we have what I like to call the Blitz Brigade archetype, which is essentially where you use battle wagons, trucks, and because maybe you lack buggies and you're kind of building out towards your right now, right? So the Blitz Brigade is where you bring as many buggies as you can, as many bikers as you can, but maybe you don't have enough, and you're kind of filling out what I would call your Cult of Speed list with boys, wagons, kind of a bit more transportation. It's not necessarily what the detachment really wants to do, but there are rules that enable you to do that, enhancements that enable you to do that. But all in all, it's not necessarily what we're seeing the most success with. Doesn't mean it can't be done, this is what an archetype would be. I would say this is more suited to, let's say you're a bit newer to Cult of Speed and you're kind of building out, and you get the trucks and the wagons and everything like that, and you're building a couple buggies here and there, but you don't have everything, right? So Blitz Brigade is well known. Shout out to anybody who's been around for older editions, 8th edition, right? Then we have what I like to call the Speed WAAAGH. So the Speed WAAAGH is a bit more of an archetype that people would remember from last edition, where you were using a bit more buggies, you were using planes, you were trying to shoot your enemies off the table with volume of fire, with all these different rockets and damage from the buggies, and maybe even the death copters in the speed buggy case. This can definitely work. You do play off Math Hammer in this case for this Speed WAAAGH, and it is, hey, I got what I got from last edition. Maybe I don't have what's going to be good and what we're going to talk about, the Cult of Speed archetype, but I do like to try to kill people with my buggies. That's more of the Speed WAAAGH. Then we have the Cult of Speed archetype, which is what we're going to be a little bit more looking into now, which is what I would look at a bit more combined factors, where you're going to bring buggies, you're going to bring copters, and you're going to bring bikers. You might even bring some infantry. And the Cult of Speed, as what I like to call the archetype now, is what I do recommend you looking into when you're playing Cult of Speed as it is right now. So as we're going forward in this presentation, have that archetype in the back of your head when you're looking at these. Yes, you can play them out, but my ultimate goal for some of you is to go more towards the Cult of Speed list archetype, which is going to be a combined arms factor, where you're presenting a bunch of different data sheets and not just going too heavily into either buggies, trucks, bikers, or infantry. So let's look at the stratagems real quick so our site can kind of envelop here. So we have, of course, the speediest freaks. In short, this is you get access to a 5-up invul, and if you're a speed freak unit or a truck or vehicle type unit. In this case, sorry, a truck unit, the speed freak vehicle unit. So in this case, if you're lower than toughness 8 or 8, you get a 4-up invul instead. That means your buggies are going to get access to it. But in reality, what's going to get access to your 4-up invul is your Def Coptas. That's going to be exclusively your most valued unit for this strat. Of course, you can use it on bikers as well, but we're talking about that going forward. We have Squig Flingin. This is what I would call one of the most useless strats, even though it does have its use cases, right? What I mean useless is that now we know very well how much strat CP you're going to have going into every turn in Pariah Nexus, guys, right? You possibly have your Grots giving you one. You have one if you discarded one at the end of the mission. So you know you're going to have 2 or 3. You know you have to be scarce with what you're doing. And as we look at all these strats, simply trying to make the enemy take a battle shock test for the chance of something happening, let's say denying Overwatch or the chance of stopping them from armor of contenting, these are going to be very circumstantial cases, whether you're trying to swing primary on 5 points because it's a late game and the end of the game, or because you're really, really trying to kill somebody because it's secondary, you need them to fail battle shock, and you're gonna, put foot throttle. We'll talk later about later. But in reality, there's other strats that you can do in most cases better than this. So what I would call one of the worst strats that we have, but that's okay because the other ones are really good. Then we have more gets over. So reactionary move. Your unit can make a normal move. So when an enemy ends up 9 inches within your unit, you can make a reaction move. This is going to be most cases your Def Coptas or bikers, right? Of course, you're moving 6 inches, but as you look at how this list is actually very much used, we're going to want to move your bikers or your Def Coptas, not only because they're most valued unit per point, but because they are the most importance for staging, as your buggies are more of a support role in this detachment. So then we have the Dock of Storm. This is going to be more about your offensive throttling, right? And this few couple strats we're going to talk about right here. So Dock of Storm, ranged units get sustained 1, but if they're within 9, they get sustained 2. And interestingly enough, because GW is so traumatized from 9th edition, shout out to you gets that abuse that, they gave us restrictions that is almost exclusive to Orks in this case, right? You almost never see restrictions that are stacked so clearly here. It says a unit cannot be targeted by this strat and the Blitzifier strat in the same phase. So the Blitzifier strat is ranged weapons have lethal hits abilities within 9s, it's on a 5+ instead of a 6. So this has the restrictions for both of these that they cannot be used with each other. You hardly ever see that in 40K. 40K is very much about using combined stratagems and effects and capabilities. GW was so affected by us last edition that they made sure we couldn't do this. And this is very detrimental to us that we don't really do a lot of damage overall. And this would be one of the ways that we could actually get around that if we're getting something like a Land Raider or not. So very weird, very odd, but this is going to be obviously most useful on your Def Coptas. It does come out to be somewhat, obviously useful into your with your bikers if you're going to use it as well. Buggies simply don't have the volume for it, and planes might have the volume for it, but they themselves aren't really that good, in my opinion, in this detachment, even though they can be used. Then we have full throttle. So after making a charge, add 1 to the wound roll. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Of course, I would like to say Def Coptas buggies are going to get the most value out of this. Simply because if you're going to do it with like a Mega Track Scrap Chat, it's better that you maybe even just do Tank Shock in that case, or you have done grenades with another unit into whatever the target's going to be to do mortals, rather than trying to get the volume from the low punches of something like a Mega Track that's a buggy that's only 4 attacks, right, guys? So you're always looking for volume when you're an Orc player, so when you want to use any of these strats and access them and have them go off, because volume is our quality for an Orc player. Then we move into our enhancements. So enhancements are actually pretty cheeky. Only one is one that I found a little odd. So we have faster than used. This takes us back to Truck Boys from last edition. Very cool. Love it. But now that we're going into Pariah Nexus, this is very important because pressure with the new layouts from the terrain allows you to stage a lot better with melee units. Therefore, if you have something like a transport that can take knobs, a brick of boys, Beast Snagger boys, Mega Knobs, something that can make your enemy actually respect you faster than use is going to be the target for that pretty much every single list that you write. It's not that you really need to, surprisingly enough, as we get to the end of this video, need faster than use, but it's one of those that for the most part, if you're playing this crusade, if you're playing this casually, if you're, you know, a general orc player just moving into speed freaks, this allows you to make up for some of the weaknesses that we have and all in this detachment and stick to our fundamentals as orc players. And then we have speed makes right. Orc models only in your command phase. If a unit's in a transport or not, if they're within range of an enemy unit, you can roll, and you on a D3 you get a CP. That's fine. You do need CP in the stratagem. If you have 25 points over, go ahead, but not something I'd fundamentally bring every time. Squig Hog Tires. This one's a bit of a lame, you know, enhancement in my opinion for me, as you're not really going to take advantage of this for the most part. So you get to consolidate 6 instead of 3. That's totally fine, but it's not really a hard-hitting unit. A lot of times you're really just not going to be able to get off into a consolidation. But all in all, if you have the points, I guess. WAAAGH Blast, in another case, is something that you want to bring every single game. Being able to make a normal move after shooting is exceptional for a Death Killer Wartrike, as when I spoke about for the stratagems and we read through your actual move, the WAAAGH Blast is another thing that's taking advantage of your move potential, as movement wins games, especially for this detachment. And setting up your bikers in certain positions in the battlefield as we get deeper into this is going to be actually the fundamentals of how you win games with this detachment. Not only because you're taking away people's primary, not only because you're blocking off charges, but because you're slowly getting closer and closer to the enemy when they really don't want you to. And in this case, you know, even tagging someone and knowing that you can fall back and then do this is pretty nice, because the strat simply says, you know, you just have to not be in combat to do it. It doesn't say you couldn't have fallen back. It does suck that you can't charge, but it's okay. Sometimes you just got to get in the way, especially with that big old Death Killer Wartrike base. Now let's talk about the archetype and the combos. So this is where I'm going to kind of get deeper into when I look at the archetypes and some of the combos. I look into each one of these and why they are so important to each one of those, right? So we have the Death Killer Wartrike plus sick bikers. We have WAAAGH Blast as the enhancement you want to bring in. Of course, the most important strat here is more gets over here, where you're going to be obviously reactionary moving. When you're playing in this Cult of Speed, I'm just going to say it now, bikers and Death Killer Wartrike alongside Death Copters are the backbone of this detachment. The more of each of these units you can bring, the more options you have and capabilities you have to win games. But the reason for this are as of 2 different reasons for each of these units. The role of the bikers and the Death Killer Wartrikes are not only to expand the primary in the game, because in Pariah Nexus, you're not doing secondaries when you're advancing anymore. You don't have battle line from the Cult of Speed as your advantage anymore. So GW directly took away our secondary scoring ability from that. Therefore, you're actually not doing it with your bikers. Bikers are actually your first wave initial kind of unit to get into the fray. You're drawing the most fire from those kind of units. You're taking up the battlefield quicker because you have the auto advance 6, because you actually can take the combat and you can take the shooting, and because the enemy has to always know, as now we're going to actually talk about the wall, is that the wall is always at your fingertips. Now, is the wall actually going to break the enemy's back? No. Surprisingly enough, this is the only orc detachment that doesn't really care about the wall nearly as much as other people do when it comes for offense. Our wall is either strictly defensive burdensome or offensively because we want to tag you, not necessarily because we're going to kill you, but because you've done poor positioning, and now we have the potential as orc players that we're going to run up, advance and charge, touch enemy tanks and shooting and combat units and shooting units, really get stuck in, not let the enemy score later in the turn, and pretty much trade our bodies for points. That's where the wall actually plays more of an importance in Cult of Speed, and that's why the bikers in this case are, just so you know, we're advancing 6 and we can wall. Automatically, they take all the enemy's attention. Now, the important thing to remember here is do not strictly throw them into the mid-table. They are not tanky enough for that, even if you give them the 5-up invuln stratagem, which in reality, you're using on something else. But what you're actually doing is using the flanks to get your bikers up the field as quickly as possible. Therefore, when people are either A, going to try to move block you because you're bikers and you might get move blocked, or B, they're getting close enough to try to kill you, you can reactionary move. That way you're consistently moving up the battlefield. That's actually where you're going to get your stratagem advantage and utility from the Death Killer War Striker bikers. Not to try to kill people with Overwatch for some weird reason. People try to do that, but not to kill people with necessarily charging them, not to use your 5-up invuln, but in reality, you're trying to use your reactionary move to get closer and closer because you want everybody to have attention on your bikers as they make way for the max Death Coptas. Now, when you're running Cult of Speed, the more Death Coptas you have, as I said before, just like bikers, the better off you are. That's simply true. That's simply matter of fact. That doesn't mean you can't play them without having maximum Death Coptas. It just means you have an easier time when you use max Death Coptas. Why? Well, because A, the stratagem access, the deadliest, the speediest freak for the 4-up invuln in this case, because of their toughness being lower than 8 and 9, means that these Death Coptas are not getting a 4-up invuln, which is nearly unheard of for orcs with this many model count unit. Makes them very, very durable in relation to orc units, right? Just got to be careful that, of course, you can only use this on 1 unit per turn. So the other 2 Death Coptas are definitely being hidden. Then, of course, they are really also versatile because they are your offensive shooting platforms as well. Now, they do have solid mortal wound potential because they can fly over you and do mortal wounds. Of course, they can throw grenades at you, and the argument for tank shock, of course. I don't recommend using your stratagems to do any mortal wounds with them. Just know that you can do them under certain circumstances. But in reality, they actually give you the shooting potential for flat 3 damage with sustained and with lethal and unsustained, that you have access to each one of these. But they simply lack reliability and all, right, guys? If you're looking at something like a Land Raider unit of Death with Death Coptas with lethal is doing maybe 3 wounds to that, mathematically speaking. Of course, they do have blast, so for a unit of boys, if you're shooting other boys, you're shooting guardsmen, you can blow those guys away and pick up maybe 10 of them. But all in all, because it is D3, you simply not only lack the quality of shots that normally we really rely on, but you lack the ballistic skill, you lack any kind of re-rolls. Therefore, it's really the will of the dice god. So anytime you're looking to throttle offensively with these Death Coptas, know that for all in all, it's going to require either multiple of these units to pick one target, or you're going to need some combined arms with some melee potential, which we'll talk about later, or you'll need some other units to help you shoot, right? In reality, Death Coptas are your I'm trying to stay alive and make it to the later game as my bikers are moving up the field and taking the attention. Keep that in mind, guys, right? Because your Death Coptas are, I'm going to pop 4-up invuln and hide 2 of my units, maybe one's in deep strike, maybe one's hiding behind a building fully, and my other one can't fully hide and is getting closer up the battlefield. That's the one that in my back of my mind is I'm doing my CP count in my head. This unit's going to use a 4-up invuln when someone goes to target it. This biker unit's going to reactionary move to stop someone from charging it, and then I'm going to move on and carry on to my next turn as I move up the field. That's how this is solely unraveling as you're playing your Cult of Speed. Next, like I said, combined arms, you need your war boss on foot. This could and or be 10 knobs or 20 boys. This could be in truck or wagon. Of course, there's arguments for other units you can use in this place, but all in all, this is what I call the combined arms unit or the mid-threat bully unit, right? You need somebody in the middle of the table, or if the enemy gets sloppy, to run up the table and touch them, but to get the respect out of the enemy from the middle of the table. If you're simply saying, hey, I'm going to bring a bunch of stuff in Cult of Speed, and I'm not going to bring anything that can reliably kill, I'm just going to try to shoot you, which is what happens if you go into the next little combo we're going to talk about. But if you're simply saying, I'm just going to shoot you, I'm going to say that the enemy's not going to respect you because there are popping smoke, there's armor of contempt, there's cover everywhere regardless. There's a good chance that you can just whiff when you try to shoot at someone with your orcs. Therefore, you need a melee threat potential. You need somebody to get respect out of the enemy when they walk to the mid-table. You need some way to deal with something like Terminators, which are 2-up save infantry that are quite durable. Of course, you can chip down something like Custodes or Terminators because you have Twin Link on the rockets, but killing and cleaning out the whole unit is simply different. And even a leftover unit of Custodians can pick up, bikers, for example, or buggies. So this is the unit that you really want to obviously using the enhancement for faster than use. As letting the enemy know, hey, you're hiding in that mid-table, the mid-table terrain back there. Just this truck full of dudes. I can move this truck, get the guys out, advance, charge, and touch you now back there. Just keep it on the back of your head. So not only can my bikers advance 6, not only do I have that, but I have this truck that these dudes can get out and get you too. Like I said, your wall isn't the nail in the coffin in this game. Your nail in the coffin in this game is having constant board control. And when you finally get to that turn 4 and you're in the enemy deployment zone still, and the enemy looks at the table and they're like, you're almost dead, but I'm still behind my own deployment zone line. That's the nail in the coffin, not necessarily the wall. Therefore, these are tools to just accentuate the pressure and prolong the game so that you can win based off controlling your rate of attrition and having a threat range. Now, the last combo and backbone archetype that I'm not really in favor of is the mech / buggies and having wagons and such like that. Yes, you can use bike planes to come off the battlefield, and your mech gives it a +1 to hit, and then you start shooting. And of course, you can have a wagon that has guns units in it, and you jump out and you shoot it with the wagon. And this can be a part of your blitz brigade. That is a entry level type way to play it. You can play that way. I would say just as you can move along and try to bring bikers and Coptas and just having individual buggies along the way without any mech signal support. So these are units that you can do. I understand what you're doing when you use them. I'm not going to get too into that because I'm simply not trying to encourage you to go that way, as it's going to give you a harder time in Cult of Speed. You might be better off in Warhorde, but nonetheless, if you are bringing at least one of those units, just know it does work. If you're trying to accentuate mech plus, strats +1 to hit, get off on the enemy, that does work. Just not the way you really want to build around your list, in my humble opinion. Now, units relevant to Cult of Speed. So on the column on the left, we have the Cult of Speed units that I want to talk about. And then the column in the middle, we have the non-Cult of Speed units that I want to cult about. Of course, there's other units that are important when you're building out your list, but these are units I wanted to nail down a bit more. So we have the Def Coptas, as we've been speaking about going forward. Run as many as possible, highly versatile as for their damage. They can actually put a good amount of punches in as their base strength 5. They get +1 to wound. So a lot of the strats in this detachment just straight up work for them. And they are the unit that you actually want to keep around for the late game. So having 1 in deep strength to keep it alive feels really good. And so when you're playing with your Deathcopters, don't throw them out willy-nilly just because you're trying to go, haha, I have you in 9 inches. I will access you with Dark Storm. That might be the case if the enemy doesn't have cover, or if they're not having a great armor safe as a whole. Maybe it's a small game and it's a good time to do it. But in reality, you want something else to really be getting off on them, combined with your Deathcoptas. And then in that case, either be able to reactionary move your Deathcoptas back behind cover, or have a CP in the back pocket next turn so you can pop that 4-up invuln. That's how you got to keep your Deathcoptas, as they're kind of keeping everything together in your list, because they're bringing some of the damage, they're bringing some of the durability, and they're bringing OC and pressure. Alongside the pressure, OC, and durability is the Def Killer Wartrike with the bikers. Of course, the Def Killer is super important because he's really the only leader unit that's fundamental, character unit that's fundamental to this detachment. Of course, there's arguments for other ones. I've already given you a couple for some, but going in, Def Killer Wartrike is just needed. Of course, I say WAAAGH Blast is the only enhancement I necessarily really love, and the other ones are just questionable, but they are what you needed. Bikers going alongside your Def Killers helps you a lot. If you have to run them alone because you don't have enough Def Killer Wartrikes, that's fine. Just bring the bikers, as having the screening, the small alarms fire with the twin link feels really good. And they go alongside everything else you're really trying to do in this detachment. So bring as many as you can. That's a very obvious no-brainer. Just remember, reactionary move, constantly letting the enemy know my wall can come, is what really is important for you when you're playing this speed wall and playing with your bikers. So I understand how you're saying, I want to run into these scouts and just straight up kill everybody. Yes, you can do them. But what you're really looking to do with your Cult of Speed is to let the enemy know, I'm running up the flanks. If you come towards the end of the middle, you're going to get jump on my Deathcopters. You're going to get jump on my melee unit, my melee combined arm units, and my Cult of Speed units are consistently moving up the table with reactionary moves, shooting and moving scoots, and having automatic movement from the bikers and the Def Killer with automatic 6. Of course, planes are optional for Cult of Speed units. Like I said, because what you're trying to do is haul someone into their backfield, into their home deployment zone, planes simply don't help you do that, and you're just investing more points into staying into your own deployment zone. That's just not going to help you win, in my humble opinion, when you're running Cult of Speed. But do what you want for fun and the memes, right? And for DACA. Then we have the buggy. So I'm just going to break down each buggy's data sheet ability and how I'd fill them into my list, because I think buggies, though they suck per point and definitely need a rewrite, and hopefully GW looks at them at some point, how you use them in your list and the support role is what's important. So we have the Mega Track Scrap Jet. Mega Track Scrap Jet is actually decent for skirmishes. The reason for that is because you're going to have the capability to do more to wounds on the charge, fall back and shoot people, and actually be able to get damage off in ways that other buggies wouldn't be able to, for the value that they wouldn't be able to either. Now, it is more intimidating, like on paper and as it looks, than it really is, but they're not impressive as a whole for reliable for the killing potential. For 80 points, they're okay. Just know that having simply one is good enough. Just know, when I'm looking at all of these buggies, none of them in my head are what's coming forward in the beginning of the game. They're simply too easy to move block. They're not strong enough to kill the screens that get in their way. That's something that the bikers are doing. So all of these buggies are going a support role. That means this Mega Track Scrap Jet, when I say it's a skirmish unit, it means it's following that biker unit that's making its way up the field, and maybe a couple scouts left in the way because of the bikers, or somebody's running up to engage and shoot at the bikers. That's where the Def Killer War Track kind of shines, where he comes in, touches it, charges, makes his way in there. Then we have the custom Booster Blasta. This obviously is the unit that when he targets someone with his rivet cannon, he gives them -1 to hit. This is more circumstantial. If you find yourself playing against a certain enemy lists, and you might need this to try to dwindle their shooting potential. All in all, its flamers are too short. Its rivet gun does literally no damage offensively. So even for support fire, this one is one of the ones I'm less likely to bring, though it can be brought. Like I said, sit it in the back, look at the enemy's most reliable thing that's trying to kill your Def Coptas, and kill them. Or maybe somebody that you know is about to charge you, shoot them, make them -1 to hit. Then you have the Snaz Wagon, which is the aura of -1 hit. This one is pretty much trying to do what the custom Booster Blast is trying to do. But in my case, yes, it is a better ability because it's an aura, therefore it's going to affect more units, and it can swing in the middle of the table. The problem with this is that it's going to get in the way of, we'll say, some of your own bikers or Def Copters that are already big base units that have a bunch of different model counts that are trying to hide. So a lot of the time you'll just end up throwing him away. When you do use him, you'll know as the player in the matchup. Of course, if it's a world leader matchup and you know that they're not going to shoot this thing away for the most part, then go ahead, just stick it in the way. It's not going to, whatever, it's anything, it's in the move block with the screen. That's cool. But in a shooting matchup, it's playing more of a support role, getting in the way, more of a later game, and that's fine, as it has decent OC. Then we have the Shock Jump Dragster for the uppy downy. Now, I know this thing sucks offensively, undoubtedly, my guys. I know it does. The real thing here is having simple board control when you're playing Cult of Speed is how you win the game. Therefore, being able to say, I have my potential to turn one, jump into this battlefield edge, take up this section of the table. So one, my enemy's unit, say I'm playing Search and Destroy and I'm in a corner, right? I can take this battlefield edge. Now my shock jump jumped over here before your unit simply moved over here. On my next following turn, I can either rapid ingress in your turn at the end of your movement, or in my own personal following turn, I'm going to bring in on turn 2 the Def Copters, and I've actually created space and behind this building where my unit can drop in freely and not get charged. So your Shock Jump Strax is actually creating space for your deep striking, for your rapid ingress, or let's say your enemy unit has a big unit of Hellblasters and they simply decided, I'm going to put them in the reserves because I don't have, with Fire Discipline from Gladius, of course, right? Let's say they have a big unit that's really, really killing fire potential with volume, for example, and they put them into reserves. If you have nothing that can run and deny someone's edge of the battlefield, and they can just walk in on the battlefield edge and have a free line of fire on you, then you're simply doing something wrong as an orc player yourself, because denying firing lanes is the way you play as a melee army. The Shock Jump Dragster is made for that turn 1 positioning potential where you move up and say, boom, okay, yes, I'm in the way here, but your charge can't get to me. If it's, let's say it's Chaos Knights, your charge can't get off to me now. Let's say it's a shooting unit. Well, now you can't get in this firing lane coming off turn 2 on the battlefield edge or coming in from deep strike. So Shock Jump Dragsta is about denying enemy placement for their deep strike and infiltration, but it's not infiltration, deep strike and reserves, but it's also about you getting your ability to drop in your deep strikes, or of course, like always, score your secondary from tabletop, from the edge. Then you have the Rocket Truck Squig Buggy, which is the one that has the indirect fire. It sucks. It's overcosted for 100 points. Even if it drops down to points, it lacks offensive potential. Simply garbage. Now we have the units that are relevant to Cult of Speed that don't have the speed free keyword. Now, trucks and wagons. Of course, this is more of a blitz brigade kind of build here, where you're bringing multiple trucks for pressure. You're hoping to have the invulns to pop off here. Maybe you're getting shot, but you just want a bunch of beast snagger boys to disembark and do some punching. You have maybe some bikers and some copters here, but you only have enough for maybe one or two of each max unit, and you're trying to fill it out. That's totally fine. That can work out. Just make sure you have faster than use on the list. Then you have knobs. In my opinion, this is the #1 unit that you want to bring for the overall killing potential. There are other units that can be argued for. Of course, there's Mega Knobs, but in Nexus at the time of this recording, Mega Knobs are still horribly handicapped by their point cost and how much they've been nerfed. Therefore, knobs have the more well-rounded suit for they actually bring the AP for killing enemy elite infantry, which you're seeing a lot in Nexus, where there's a lot of 2-up armor saves going around everywhere. So when that Def Copter unit jumps up on something and there's 2 Def Copters shooting at a 2-up armor save type of unit, and you need to finish it off, let's say a Tau Riptide or something, you have your knobs to come in and actually be able to finish it off as well. Or if it's even, let's say, Terminators, they can run and finish them off as well. Then, but if let's say it's a Tyranid monster, you have, of course, the Beast Snagger boys. They're serving a similar role to the knobs. They're just a bit cheaper, and they're doing the devastating wounds in that case as well. They're getting up to strength 6 for the volume of single punches, so that works well into killing screens or T6 units too. So it was better, let's say, Tyranid matchups. Haha, of course, hint. But they can do all the same things as you would imagine for the trucks, wagons, knobs, is all in all. Then we have Zagra Wartsnaga. Surprisingly enough, yes, I do find him to be acceptable, not ideal, but acceptable. As like we spoke about, board control and table presence is really how you win game with this detachment. So having Zagra to be able to scout into a corner of the battlefield, allow you, like I said, to do similar things to take up the battlefield. He's doing what I'll say. I'll just add this now as similar things to the commandos. The difference is Zagra can do stealing the enemy whole field objective. As in, if you put him in a wagon, I know, crazy, right? Well, actually, you can't put him in a wagon. I lied. Sorry. If you put him in position where he scouts and he moves into the mid table and then he does his WAAAGH, if you can steal the enemy home objective, let's say on Linchpin, it's a game swinging potential right there. So having Zagra on a list where everything's going Cult of Speed and your bikers are already moving and people are going to get in position to try to kill all these stupid grots, and you're going to get a reaction move off them. You're going to stop charges into your Death Killer War Trikes. So Zagra is always in potential. The crappy part is that he can still get denied by infiltrators. That's where commandos come into play. Commandos having the infiltrate capability stops you from getting denied from move blocked, right? So let's say a unit of Nurglings can't actually freely move block you as it could in other games. But 2, it allows you to stage up somewhere safely while giving the enemy even the potential to shoot at you and have the same role of, I have somewhere to drop in a deep strike. I have somewhere to drop my shock jump dragsta. I have somewhere to come in the battlefield edge. I have somewhere to stage to steal my natural expansion. I have somewhere to stage for my WAAAGH, right? So commandos allow you for staging and tabletop presence, which is really an important fundamental to how you actually win games as a Cult of Speed player. Now, we're going to look at an actual Cult of Speed list that did great at ATC, and we actually got to see real world results from. I also got to speak to the player as well, so I still want to use this list. So shout out to Eric Hogan, as he was someone who I got to exchange a few words with. You got to watch him on War Games Live, and I had some tests with his list, and I found it to be fun and pretty good. So we have Eric Hogan's Cult of Speed list, where he did get a Cult of Speed teams with. So he has 3 Death Killer War Trikes. And mind you, as everything we went over here, guys, on this list, as we went over this presentation, his list does everything that we want to do, but he does it his own way. So we have 3 Death Killer War Trikes, 1 with WAAAGH Blaster because it's the best. Then you have a simple war boss because, of course, like we spoke about, you want that melee potential for the combined arms, for the mid-table threat, and to get that respect. Then we have a snaz wagon, 3 max unit of death copters, 2 units of grots. I find the 2 grots to be the key unit because having 2 allows you to not only have the flexibility of in certain matchups use one of them to be a throwaway or to scoring, but if someone has that deep striking annoyance, if they can come within 3 of you or they have a lot of deep strike, you have a lot more screening potential when you have 2 units of grots. 1 unit of commandos, 1 custom booster blaster, 1 Megatrax scrapjet, 10 knobs with a power claw, 1 shock jump dragster, 2 6-man unit of war bikers, followed by 1 3-man unit of war bikers. One thing I want to point out here, no faster than you enhancement and no truck on this list. That's because when this list was written and how he played this list, as we witnessed on WAAAGH Live, and once I spoke to him, was the knobs and the war boss, which are simply the mid-table presence, is staged in the middle of the table, waiting for a while or waiting for someone to simply walk up onto the mid-table to run out and charge them. He doesn't even have the interest in running up the middle of the table or a table edge with the truck, trying to take advantage of faster than use. He's just trying to use his other units to play those edges. Why is that? That's because bikers are fast, bikers have good OC, and bikers are running through chaff, especially if you can give them +1 to wound, and especially if you can give them +1 strength from the wall. Of course, the Def Coptas can pop out and rise to shine to shoot people when it's their time to do it. And he has multiple different buggies, each for their different versatility roles, as we already spoke about earlier, for different matchups. And he made them each work, and you can too, as we spoke about how they're actually used overall. So remember, buggies aren't coming out in the beginning of the game, getting your way with their stupid bases, with their crappy shooting offensive output and their strappy melee. No, your buggies are coming in actually to clean up units that aren't dead yet, putting on debuffs on enemy units, scoring your secondaries for you, taking up screening potential so enemies can't deep strike, and all playing the support role. War bikers are running up early, Def Copters for the late game. And that's how that list runs out. Of course, if you wanted to add trucks and buggies, you could do that too, because you don't have enough bikers. Just simply use them to run up the table edges and still have your Def Copters for late games so that you can put good OC in the enemies, put good shooting, and have the advantage of popping the 4-up invuln so you can stay alive through the enemy onslaught and really trade your bodies for points as you controlled your rate of attrition and played the old-fashioned way of the Orks, which is to die for the Great WAAAGH. So here you go, guys. That was my take on the Kult of Speed and how they look in Pariah Nexus. I do think they need a bit of help as they lack offensive killing. They're not very threatening. They lack AP all over the place. All in all, they need a bit look at from GW, but don't forget that Kult of Speed is great for Crusade and it's good for small games. So enjoy them all you can and just be happy that movement wins games, speed kills, and there's always one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall because we knock your teeth out. Now, before I mess this up, because I almost didn't look at the super chats, that was for if we talk this later. I'm going to look at the super chats and see what you guys got to say because I know some of you guys were excited about the Kult of Speed. So we have a bunch of gifted memberships from, what's up, you guys, for all the gifted. So 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships. Whoa, let's go, you get. That's pretty awesome. Thank you for that very much. I'm going to read the chats too. Let me get to these super gifted memberships. Wicked Joe with the 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships. Shout out to Wicked Joe. Nice to talk to you, buddy. Keep going out there and all those tournaments. And of course, Murder Mouth, thank you gets very much. You guys with a lot of support. I didn't realize all these were building up while I was getting stuck in there. Aaron with 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships. Whoa, for Aaron and all you gets that are supporting the Great WAAAGH. Thanks, guys. That means a lot. I was getting so deep into that I didn't even notice all of these. So thank you. That really means a lot. You guys were hooking me up like that, and maybe I wasn't speaking off into the wind. And of course, Wapo with 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships. Whoa! So we got 20 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships just in this stream alone from our legends, our supporters. Thank you guys very much. Super generous. It means a lot to me and all of the guys in the gits. Of course, it helps us with our raffles and everything we do for the channel. We're creeping up to 3,500 subs. So of course, like, subscribe, sub, share, comment. Let me know what you think about the Cult of Speed and how I did, things that maybe I missed or that you would do. And it means a lot. Hopefully we can get to 4K. My goal right now, guys, is to get to the end of the year to try to get to maybe 4.5, maybe 5K. That's a pretty big jump, but you know, we can do it with enough likes, because I know there's enough orc players out there that need some love. They just are trying to find us, trying to find the Great WAAAGH, right? They're just not close enough to feel our WAAAGH energy yet. Wicked Joe, it's the rise of the green tide. That's what I'm talking about, boys. Even though overall people are a little down about the orcs, for sure. So all you guys, at least you guys got to say. Shooting is very unreliable, but movement is crazy, and they have the ability to touch anything on the board. Okay, yeah, that's true. They do, even though it's more of the bikers that are getting the potential to touch everything on the board. What's our boy Harold saying? He's saying 2 buggies and 6 bikers. The Death Killer Wartrike would be great with that Speed Freaks Bach. Yeah, it would be. Even though surprisingly, the Death Killer Wartrike is a bit cheaper than other buggies or just characters than you would expect. He gets a big old box, but he's really not that overpriced. Of course, he's a bit expensive but for his big base, he's and his big model, kind of cool. I guess per point he's a bit overpriced per dollar, but I never felt too bad buying a Death Killer Wartrike. At least maybe it changed. Maybe now he's like $70. I don't know. That'd be crazy. Cliff Wood said, I just starting to build my Orks army. I decided I want to do something with the content of Cult of Speed Gox content. Oh my god. I want to do something with the content of the Speed Freaks box set from a few years back. That's my next buy. Oh shoot. Okay. Well, hopefully this video helped you, even though, like I was saying, it's gonna take a while, buddy. It's gonna take a while for you to build up you know, a Cult of Speed army, because having enough bikers, having enough death copters takes a lot of hobbying, money, stuff like that. So at first you might be using the backbone of trucks and everything. That's always cool. That definitely works. Just know you're trading out points for bodies and blood and trauma for the chance to win, and that's totally fine. That's very orky. So I look forward to you doing that. Of course, be sure to share pictures and share pictures in the Discord and let everybody know how you're doing with that. And thanks to everybody who supported in the chat, because you know this month's paint competition was actually buggies. So yeah, that's cool. And we say we have an orc. He says, which unit is best for the new truck boys? Knobs, mans, or boys? In this video, I put knobs. Overall, knobs I would say are the best one, as they have the versatility killing potential, right? The fact that they're -2 AP, damage 2, a lot of hitting, put you through the threshold. Of course, they do fall short on certain toughnesses. That does suck, but they can help clean it up after the death copters have put high damage rockets into them. So yeah, well, thank you guys for everything that supported. I appreciate that very much. Hopefully that's helped anybody out that's building Cult of Speed, looking for how to play their Cult of Speed in Pariah Nexus. I know that overall it's pretty weak and it's not that exciting, but it's always what you make of it, right? And do the best with what you can. And if you can make it work now, imagine once GW gives it some attention, right? So there's always one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall, because we knock your teeth out.